So, Mr. Jayaraman.
Good evening, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so friends, we are at 6 p.m. So once again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our series lecture on Plato dialogues. Till now, so let me just make Jayaraman spotlight for everyone so that we get to see the speaker of today. So once again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our series lecture on Plato dialogues. Till now, we had 8 programs covering various topics like Lysis, Meno, Gorgias, Charmides, Parmenides, Theaetetus, and we also had Critillus last time. Today's topic, as we all know, is on the Sophist. And as always, to take us through today's lecture, we have with us Sri.T.K.Jayaraman. A very hearty welcome to you, sir, on behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture. So as we all know, T.K. Jayaraman, sir, retired from Indian Revenue Service, and he's a lawyer by qualification and a teacher of English and French at our institute for long, and a man who is deeply associated with various facets of philosophy and an avid reader of various books. So I now request Sri T.K. Jayaraman to take us through today's session. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arkali Venkatesa Prasad. Good evening, friends. Today, our topic is Plato's dialogues, the Sophist. You know, most of the Plato's dialogues, it's all named after a particular person who participates in the dialogue. Most of the cases are like that. But here, the dialogue is titled as the Sophist. So I have to tell you something about it before going to the dialogue proper. So what exactly is, because this is now an English word also, Sophist, sophistry, sophism, these are all, if you go and take the Oxford English Dictionary, you will find these words and you will find the definitions for these words. You have to understand that this word sophist is coming from the Greek language, and in Greek language, sophos means wisdom. It also means a wise man. So that is the origin of the word. The word itself denotes something very nice. You know, it's wisdom. That's why you have this word philosophy. So sophos is a very good word in the Greek language. That you have to understand. In fact, many of the ancient Greek poets and wise men, they were all called sophists, including Homer. We had the 7 sages of Greece, 7 wise men, they were also known as sophists. So the word itself, denotes something very nice, a positive word, it denotes wisdom. But unfortunately, the present meaning of the word sophist and related words sophistry is very, very pejorative. It's very, very pejorative. So we have to understand the reason behind this. If at all, you go to internet and find out, the synonyms of sophistry or sophist, you will find all these words, say chicanery, deception, deceptiveness, equivocation, evasion, lie, fallacy, speciousness, trickery. None of these words is having any positive connotation. They're all bad words. They'll say a specious argument. So sophistry is that. So how come such a good word, it completely changed its meaning? A wise man, he won't indulge in chicanery, he won't indulge in deception, he won't indulge in specious arguments. Then how come So that's very interesting. So that's why you have to go to the origins of Greek philosophy. So I have to take some time to tell you that, and then we will go to the dialogue. So this is it. What happens in the 5th century BC? That is the period actually, Plato's dialogues, we are going to the 5th century BC in Greece. All these things take place at that period of time. There was a particular school of philosophy, remember. They were also great thinkers, not that they were not, spurious or something. There were great thinkers, there were great names also. So what happened? They were all teachers. They were teaching for money. It's all right. Even today, people, we teach and we take money. That itself is not a bad thing. They were making a lot of money by teaching. But what is it that they taught? That is the most important thing. That society was a democratic society, and there was a lot of litigation, and much value was attached to speech, good speech, convincing speech. You have to speak in such a manner that the other person is convinced. So that was much valued upon in those society. So that's why you have to be trained in language and you have to be trained in speech. That's all right. There's nothing wrong in that. But then there was a tendency to win the argument anyway. Anyway, by hook or crook, you have to win in an argument. You have to establish your point. That's why they started all sort of deceptive, deceptive ways to convince the other person. So these type of tricks they started using, and they started teaching that. Rhetoric also. In rhetoric also, your speech will look very, very effective. But if you go deep into it, that logic will be very defective. The logic will be defective. But somehow it will convince the other person. It will be very difficult to find the fallacy in your argument. So that is the problem. These types of teachers were there who taught rhetoric, who taught argumentation and all these things. Their aim is somehow, you have to win the argument. This we have gone through in the earlier dialogue. If you remember in Euthydemus, I told you a new word, heuristics. It's all that, heuristics. Somehow you have to win in the argument, by hook or crook. So that is heuristics. So they started teaching these type of things. That is why the term, even in that period, it got a very bad name, sophist and sophistry. So even during the time of Plato. And Plato was very much against this, one thing. So you will always find in almost most of the dialogues, these sophists are looked down upon in Plato's dialogues. And apart from Plato, there were other people also who did not take kindly to the sophists. So that is why the word has got a very bad name. Coming to the actual sophists, there have been many great thinkers. Of course, you can question their, philosophy and all that. There was earlier itself, we had a dialogue called Protagoras. Protagoras was a sophist, a great thinker. In fact, he was respected by Plato and Socrates. Then we had Gorgias. There was a dialogue in that name also. We had it. And he was also respected, but they had their own philosophy. So I am not going to go into the philosophy of sophism. Protagoras said one thing: man is the measure of all things. That means whatever is there, there is no absolute truth. It all depends on the person who looks at it. So that's one point of view. It's okay. We are not going to discuss that. Like that. Then there was one great skeptic. It is very interesting, to know about him. This Gorgias, he used to say, there is nothing. Nothing is there. Even if something is there, he says, you cannot know it. Even if you know it, He says you cannot communicate it to somebody else. Even if you can communicate it to somebody else, the other person cannot understand. This was a particular philosophy, it's called nihilism or nihilism, nihilistic philosophy. There's nothing. Contrasted with another philosophy, a pre-Socratic philosopher, Parmenides. We had a dialogue also, Parmenides. Parmenides said there is being. The being is only one. So you can only think of being. You cannot think of not being, or you cannot think of that which is not. And the being, it is never produced. It is always there. Nothing is produced. It cannot disappear. It's always there. It is at rest. Like that. That was Parmenides. And from Parmenides' principles, there was his disciple Zeno, who created a lot of paradoxes. They were using rigorously logic. And from that's why Parmenides is also called the first metaphysician in the Western world. In Western philosophy, was the first metaphysician. And today's dialogue, we are going to see how his philosophy gave trouble to Plato, or to the main speaker in this dialogue. So that's going to be quite interesting. How the Parmenides was a problem, for the people, for the philosophers. So that's about the Parmenides. I told you about Gorgias, and I told you about Protagoras. So there was one Hippias. So many philosophers. Of course, one thing, they all made a lot of money. They gave importance to material wealth also. It's all right. We are not going to touch on that aspect of this Sophists. But only thing is, many of them tried, clever arguments, to win your case. So they taught them. That is why they were very, very popular, but they were looked down upon also. Because people who know their trick, they looked down upon these Sophists. Now here, I want to have a slight digression, because this topic is going to be very dry, as you understand. See, this is metaphysics. Now, regarding metaphysics, Walter said, this is what he said. If somebody speaks and the listener does not understand, and if the speaker himself does not understand what he says, then I will call that metaphysics. That's what Walter told. I hope it doesn't happen today evening, So that's metaphysics. Metaphysics got a bad name later from the other philosophers. In fact, in 20th century, there was a movement called logical positivism. So the logical positivism, the principle is metaphysics is meaningless, because they had a scientific oriented mind. They said whatever you say, define or something, it should be measurable. It should be possible to measure it. If you cannot measure, then it is nothing, it is useless, you throw it away. So according to the standards of logical positivism, if you talk to them about being, non-being, forms and all, they will say, what is it? And they will completely reject. And even the great English philosopher David Hume also said the same thing. He said, when you talk, if it is some mathematical truth, relation between things, I accept it. Or if something is a matter of fact, then I will accept it. All the other things are, he said, sophistry, and you have to burn them. So this is the tendency of some philosophers who rejected metaphysics. Now I was telling you, I'm going to digress a little before going into the dialogue. So what is the digression? You have to understand that the digression is this. There was during the days of Socrates, there was a great Greek comedian, Aristophanes. Aristophanes is the author of a very famous play, comedy. It is called The Clouds. I will just briefly tell you what it is. That is going to be today's digression. The clouds. The clouds, it lampoons Socrates. It caricatures him, you know. Remember, Socrates was also, sometimes people considered him as a sophist because of his passion for argument, because no one can beat him in argument. And he could make anybody a fool, He would make anybody contradict himself. That was, the Socratic method and all. So many people had, taught him. He was some fellow, with whom you can't talk. Anything you see, he would contradict. But there was a difference between Socrates and the other sophists. One thing we have to understand. But still, Socrates was lampooned in this comedy, which is called Clouds. I'll tell you what exactly is this comedy. This is, very briefly, I will tell you, because even if you have to read it, it may take 1.5, 2 hours, you can read it, It's not very big, but it is a comedy of ideas, a very brilliant comedy. It is a lampooning of those intellectuals, that's all. But we will see what it is. There was an old man, and he was lying in his bed, and his son was by his side, his son. The old man was very much worried, he is not getting sleep and all that. Why? He was terribly indebted, lot of loans. How come? Because, two things. One, the aristocratic habits of his wife. Then his son was very fond of horse racing. So all his wealth gone, and he is indebted to so many people. They are all the time the creditors. They are troubling him. So he tells his son, who was lying there by his side, I can't sleep and all. Then he says, what can I do? He says, see, there is a school nearby. The school's name is Tinkery. So that school is run by Socrates. So there Socrates is teaching people how to win an argument, just or unjust. Just or unjust, he will teach you how to win an argument. So you go and join and come, then you can talk in the court and win the argument and see that we need not pay our creditors. Son, he was lazy. No, I don't want to go. If you want, you go. So the poor father, he goes. So this is all in the play, remember. This is all in the comedy which is taking place. So in the play. So this old man goes and, he is greeted by the students of the Tinkery. They are praising much about Socrates, saying that he discovered these, that, and all that. All sorts of physical things, scientific things. Then this man was much impressed. You see, so he sees the Socrates is inside a basket, and that basket is slowly, it is being descended from heaven. That means from above in the theater. He is sitting in the basket and he is coming. So that is his abode. The heaven, it is his abode. So that's why the clouds actually, it represent the deities of this school, this particular school called Tinkery. So Socrates is slowly coming and he is greeting this chap, this old man, and the old man says, I have come to, join your school to learn, these arguments and all, how to argue. Immediately he tells him, I have to solve my indebtedness problem. That is why I have come and all that. Socrates asks him to join. Then there are certain things with chorus. Chorus is the clouds. I don't want to go into all that. Let us see what exactly happens. This person, He is very eager to learn. He is very eager to learn, argument from Socrates. Then Socrates teaches him many things, these, that, and all. But this man is not impressed. No, 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 Socrates, come to the point. I am very much worried about my debts. You only tell me how to solve, that problem. The Socrates again, he talks about, the masculine nouns, the feminine nouns, these, that, and all sorts of, things which are not relevant for this fellow. He is very impatient, you know. Then Socrates says, no, 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 I will make you think and all that. Then what he does, he makes him lie down on a bed full of bugs. The bugs started biting that old man. Then he gets up. Then he says, now you can think, tell me how you can solve your problem. Can you think something and tell me, like that? Socrates is asking him. Then that fellow tells something, there are very, very silly things this old man tells. Then Socrates appreciates him and all. Then finally the old man says, no, 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 I am fed up. I am going to hang myself, he says. Then Socrates was very much upset. What, man, you are not a good student and all, he was telling. Then immediately the chorus tells the old man, you go back and send your son. So this old man goes home, drags his son and puts him in the school. Then the son watches the argument between two people, two men. One man is an old man, another man is a young man. The old man is called better argument, the young man is called worse argument. The old man talks about, many things, how you have to be self-restrained, how to respect your parents and all that. The young man is telling, no, 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 you have to be self-indulgent, you have to enjoy yourself. Why should you follow all those things, respecting parents and all? It is all wrong. Like that. Then finally the old man, the better argument, is defeated. And he says, no, nothing. So these things this fellow sees, and then he is also taken into the school and he is also being taught. And finally he thinks he has attained wisdom. He runs home and he tells his father, yes, now I can solve all the problem and all. The moment he goes, the creditors also, two people come, and he tries to tell them something. They were not impressed. They said, we will come in another 1 hour and you have to pay us the debts. The old man is very much worried. The creditors come, the old man is running away. Then these creditors are chasing him, and this boy, who is the son of that old man, he starts beating his father. Then he is aghast. He says, how come, you are beating me? What is the justification for it? Then this young man says, did you not beat me when I was a child? So I can beat you. Like that, he started arguing with him. So this old man is very much angry. He is, why I went to join that school with Socrates, and why I sent my child. He's cursing himself. And then there is that statue of goddess Hermes. He prays to it, and he believes that Hermes is telling him to go and burn Socrates' school. So he sets fire to the school thinkery. Inside, Socrates and all the other students, they are coming out, and he starts chasing Socrates. This is the play. Yes, I took a while to narrate you. Now, this is only to show that how even Socrates was lampooned by the dramatist, Aristophanes, and this finds mention reference in Plato's, dialogue Apology, where Socrates is defending himself. So this is all the background for the Sophist and the Sophistic period in Greek philosophic history. Now let's come to the dialogue proper. So now we are coming to the dialogue proper and not any digression. who are the persons of the dialogue? It's very simple, easy to remember. There are not many people at all, excepting the spectators. There is Theodorus. Theodorus was a mathematician. He was also there in one of the earlier dialogues, Theaetetus. So Theaetetus is also there, younger mathematician. He looks like Socrates only. Then Socrates is there. Then there is the fourth person, who is a stranger from Elea. Elea is the place of Parmenides, remember. So this person in the dialogue is known as the Eleatic stranger. He is known completely by that name only. We don't know his actual name. So these persons are there. These are the only persons. And remember, this dialogue takes place the next day to the dialogue of Theaetetus. At the end of the dialogue of the Theaetetus, it was decided that Socrates and those same people, Theodorus and Theaetetus, would meet the next day. So, true to their word, they are meeting, and these Theodorus and Theaetetus, they bring this Eleatic stranger, and they introduce, Theodorus introduces the Eleatic stranger to Socrates. He says he is. Elea is, is near, it was part of Greece, near southern Italy. It's the place of Parmenides. And remember, this Eleatic stranger is also a philosopher. He's a philosopher, and he was also a disciple of Parmenides and Zeno. These things you have to understand. So he was a very learned man. And now you have to understand that in this dialogue, the role of Socrates is minor or almost nil, we can say. We can't say nil because he is the initiator. Otherwise, it is very, very minor. And the dialogue is conducted by, because he is a philosopher, the Eleatic stranger. And the other person who is conversing with him is none other than Theaetetus, the young mathematician. So only these two people will be talking. So you have to understand that. Okay. Now, what is it they are going to talk? As you know, in Theaetetus, the subject, what is knowledge and all, different replies were given, and finally they went to Logos, and the dialogue as usual ended in aporia. They could not really clarify what is Logos and all that, It was ending in an aporia. So this is a continuation, not of the same subject. Let's see what exactly is going to be the subject matter of this. So Socrates was introduced to this Eleatic stranger. Socrates makes a nice comment. He feels that the Eleatic stranger, he is probably, a god has come in the disguise of a stranger. That is what he commented. Why? Because that was the time when Socrates was going to face his trial. In few days' time, he is going to face his trial. He was also accused of being a sophist and all that, So probably, God has sent this man to punish me. Like that, he's commenting. That's beside the point. That's not very important, So after introduction, Socrates just asks him, the Eleatic stranger, because he comes from the land of Parmenides, from the place of Parmenides, he's asking, Mr. Stranger, they are addressing him as a stranger only. Mr. Stranger, could you please tell me, in your country, in your region, is there some difference between a philosopher, a sophist, and a statesman? These are the three things, three words: a philosopher, a sophist, and a statesman. Is there any difference in your country? I would like to know. That was all the question. Would you like to clarify it? And we will be quite grateful to you. With great deference, Socrates speaks to him. So it is not the old Socrates, the Socrates meek, trying to understand something from the stranger. So now he agrees, but he agrees it's a very difficult subject. I can tell you, actually they are different. A philosopher is different from sophist, is also different from statesman. Statesman, there is going to be a separate dialogue. So today we are not going to talk anything about statesman. Today's topic, then, it is exactly going to be now, who is a sophist, or the definition of a sophist. How to find who is a sophist. So they are following a particular method that is important. So that is a particular method. I will come to it. So he agrees, yes, but he says he doesn't want very difficult questions from a person like Socrates, who would always be may make other person uncomfortable. So he says, but it should go on smoothly. He says, then he says, no problem, the Theaetetus is there, so both of you can argue. He will listen to you and you can explain. So I will be only looking at you. I will be listening to whatever you say. So that's all. So the dialogue is going to start. In this dialogue, you have to understand most of the talking is done by the Eleatic stranger. And of course, this Theaetetus participates in the dialogue. He asks some question, but his participation is quite friendly. It is not, antagonistic and all that. He doesn't, ask uncomfortable questions, but he agrees. But it is not that he simply says yes, yes, yes. He really participates in the dialogue. Okay. So now, the interesting thing in the dialogue is this Eleatic stranger, he says, let us, by sophist, Mr. Theaetetus, you understand something. You have certain conception of sophist. I have certain conception of sophist. All that. What is common is only that name, but we should understand exactly who it is. So for that, he says we have to hunt that person. This is the word. We have to hunt that person and we have to place him exactly. And that means we have to find the essence of that sophist. Who is the sophist? You understand, generally, who is a sophist, whom we can call as a sophist, or how to define him. Okay, yes. So we are going to follow a method. Yes, we are going to follow a method. So remember, this method is called the method of division. This is important in Platonian metaphysics. It is easy to understand what exactly is this method of division. It's not very difficult what exactly it is. It is something like that. Suppose you are going along a road, first a straight road. The straight road forks into two divisions. Okay, the two divisions. So you decide to take one division, one path. Then again this path goes somewhere, and again it branches off into a fork with two prongs, two. Then you choose one, again, and so on, and until finally you find your quarry, your target, quarry, your prey or quarry, because the word hunting is used. This is all the method. It is called dichotomous division. You have to divide. I'm also reminded of the botanical classification in taxonomy. They have, this great taxonomist Linnaeus. Linnaeus, he found out a method of classifying, biological things by the genus and species. So you have a genus and then you have a species. Like, Homo sapiens. Homo is the human. Sapiens, with a brain or a thinking. So like that, human is known as Homo sapiens. So in your Latin, they use the Latin language to denote any biological species. They follow a method of classification. So here also it is something like that, a method of classification. So they are going to follow a method of classification in hunting the sophist. So before that, he wants to take one example, because The sophist, it is something abstract. It is not any other profession. You can easily, suppose you take about a butcher, what he does, you can picture what he is going to do. But sophist, what he is doing, we do not know, because most of the things are taking place in the brain, in the mind. So they are going to take a paradigm. Paradigm, don't be intimidated by the word, it means example here. They are going to take a normal example. So it will be shown how they are locating that example, and that same method will be, similar method will be followed in the case of a sophist, and they are going to find the definitions of sophist. So first, let us see what is the example which the Eleatic stranger is taking. The Eleatic stranger is taking the example of, first he says, we'll take an example of angler. Angler, angling, catching the fish. So there is a simple person, so very easy to understand. So we will take the example of the angler. So, all right. Now he is asking a series of questions to Theaetetus. He is answering. So what emerges, I will tell you, because I need not tell every question and every answer. What emerges is, first of all, angler, he has some art. Everybody cannot do the angling. So they take the generalization art. So if you are expert in something, if you can do something, it's an art. So let us take the art. So the art is taken. Now art is divided into two. This is the dichotomous division which I was explained to you with the help of the image of the road. So this is branching into two kinds. He says there are certain arts which produce, like agriculture, animal husbandry, shipbuilding. It also includes the art of imitation. So there are certain arts producing arts. Then certain arts are acquisition arts. You acquire by trading, by fighting, by hunting, it's all by conquest, so many things. By learning also you acquire many things. So it encompasses a lot of things, So acquisition art. Then now coming to the angler, we will leave the production. He is not producing anything. He is coming under the category of acquisition art. So in acquisition also, secretly you hunt something, hunting, or use open force. So again, we will say this angler will come in the secret, hunting type. So he is a hunter, hunting type. In hunting also, there is the hunting of living, animals, prey, and hunting of lifeless things. Hunting of lifeless things means like diving and all that, you acquire something. So again, now the angler will come in hunting of living things. So in hunting of living things, there is hunting of land animals and hunting of water animals. Here it will come in water animals. In water animals, certain things are birds. So hunting them, it is called in English fowling. Then next thing is fishing. In fishing, he again classifies, you can fish by nets and by giving blow. And again he classifies, you can do fishing by day and night. Again he comes to day. Then in day, this barbing, barbing. With spears, you can attack the ship. Then with a hook, you can catch the fish, that is angling. So finally they have come to the angler. So this is a concrete example of division. Now remember, this is quite easy because he's an angler. I told you angling is very easy for us to understand. So it is easy for us to do this division, although it is little laborious. Now, on the same pattern, now they are going to, both of them, they are going to try to locate the sophist. Where? There only they encounter a lot of problems. In the case of angler, exactly you go to one destination, terminus. But in the case of the sophist, they are going to different places. But I am giving you the first example for the definition. Other things I am not going to, I can't take all the time. Then I will summarize the findings, all the definitions, and then we will go to the next part, what exactly we learned from all these things. So now, after finishing locating the angler, now they are going to the sophist. So they say the sophist also we should start from the hunting side. Hunting came both for angler. So sophist also is a sort of hunter. Then hunting is divided into here land animals and swimming animals. Then among land animals, hunting of tame animals and hunting of wild animals. Then the sophist is classified in coming under the hunting of tame, is a hunter of tame animals. Man is a tame animal. Okay. So in hunting, the tame animal, there are again two things. Hunting with violence, piracy, man stealing, tyranny, the military art. These are all violence. Then the art of persuasion. So the sophist will come under that. The art of the lawyer, popular orator, art of conversation, and all that. Then in this persuasion also, there is a private and there is a public. Then in private, this chap will come sophist. Then in private, one is by the method of hiring, another by the method of gift. Let us leave the gift. So he is classified under hire because he is taking money. And what is he giving? He is just giving, those days it's called arete in Greek, means virtue. Virtue means excellence there, remember it. He is somebody who is teaching excellence, and for that he is demanding money, reward, which is money. So now this is the first definition. They located it following the acquisitive art, they located the sophist. So he comes from the acquisitive family. He hunts animal, living animals, land, tame animal, man, private, hire, taking money in exchange, and what he is giving education. So the first definition is a hunter after young men of wealth and rank. Remember, this is how they got the first definition of the sophist. Now, the problem is there are other definitions. So they are following the same method. But it was quite difficult because they located him in different branches. He is everywhere. He is not confined to one place. That is the difference between the angler and the sophist. So now I will enumerate, having given the example in one case, in all the other cases, the same method of division was followed, and this was the finding. He is the paid hunter after the wealth of youth. Because the youth only were interested in learning argument, rhetoric, and all that. So that is what he is doing. See, every case, the return is important, the money is important. So it was also found out that he is a merchant in the goods of the soul. See, all is connected with the mind. He is not, the sophist is not selling some merchandise, some materials and all. It is always intellectual, intellectual or spiritual, if you want to say that. So he is classified as a merchant in the goods of the soul. Then he is a retailer of the same sorts of, wares. That is the third definition. Then he manufactured the wares which he sold. Manufactured means he created. Then that was the fourth definition. And the fifth definition is he belonged to the fighting class and was further, fighting means not the actual physical fighting, it is the again arguments, heuristics. On heuristics, we learnt a great deal in the dialogue. You go back to it, Euthydemus. Euthydemus was very interesting dialogue on heuristics, means winning the argument by using all perverted logic. So that is it. The Euthydemus and his brother, they were also sophists, if you remember. So he belonged to the fighting class and was further distinguished as a hero of debate who professed the eristic art. Then, okay, the sixth definition is somewhat interesting. Interesting in the sense, it is but not very pejorative. It is something like that. The sixth definition starts from a particular art known as art of separation. Say in domestic, work, suppose there is some grain and all, we use, we separate it, we use the filter, we use the strainer, different types of, that is the physical separation, where you separate the unwanted from the wanted, the pure from the impure. So like that, it is transferred to a human person. There is, again, in human we have the body and the soul. Then the body also, impurities have to be removed, ugliness has to be improved. So you have the gymnastics as well as the art of medicine. So they are going like that. But what about the soul? In soul also, a lot of impurities are there. See, you don't have a proper understanding of the virtues, all these and all that, the ignorance, these are all the problems with the soul. So there is a person, who can clean it. So this is a very controversial definition. He was a purger of the souls, purger. He removes the impurity. He clears away all notions, abstractions to knowledge. In the sense that, see, when you go to the dialogue, a detailed description is given. So this particular activity of cleaning your soul is like that, like what exactly Socrates carried out. He will test your knowledge. What is it? He will say, what is piety? You will give a reply, and he will ask you a question and all. And finally, with the art of refutation, he will realize that you are ignorant, and you will be ashamed, and you will be angry with yourself. This is what he was doing. So this is also included in this Sophist. So this is a very perplexing thing. Why Plato has included this here? This is a complete, description of the Socratic, thing. So somehow it was decided the Sophist is also this. That means there is some thin line of difference only between the Sophist and the philosopher, who is Socrates. Socrates is philosopher, and he is not a Sophist. That is established. But then it is more or less like that. So this is a very interesting part of the dialogue. After defining like this Eleatic stranger somehow is not satisfied. And even while describing the sixth definition, he says, so this is how the sophist of noble lineage is defined. So that also he gives. That means this is something very good. The sixth definition is very good. But still, the Eleatic stranger feels that they have not completely located this fellow who is the sophist. So they are going to come to a final definition. Of course, they arrived at the final definition. Before arriving at the final definition, so they decided like this. See, the sophist does all these things. He takes money also. Everyone is willing to give him money. And he does all these things. In a way, what he does is, nobody is able to find out, because, he's so clever. The difficulty with him is he pretends to know something, though he doesn't know. He pretends to know something, and he convinces the people. He convinces the people that he knows something. So they are going to go to a new line of thinking, which is called the art of imitation. They say in all these things, what is important, common is the art of imitation. Imitation of the wise man. Let's be very clear. He himself is not a wise fellow. He does everything to impress others and to get money. But he is a master of the art of imitation. There is a very long discussion on the art of imitation. What is imitation? Again, it is divided into likeness making and making of appearances. So this is where they are placing the sophist. They also call it as the fantastic art. So it is something they are giving a lot of examples, like a painter. The painter, an experienced painter, can paint something very natural, and he can keep it at a distance, and he can cheat children. Children will believe that it is a real thing. Like that, this sophist, what with his words, with the jugglery of words, with all that magic, rhetoric and all, he is able to do, something. That means he is able to tell you something false and make you believe. That means he is the producer of images, false things. That's all. Take it, because there are many words by which we can describe it. So that is it. He is the producer of false images. He is a pretender. This is the thing. But otherwise, he behaves like a philosopher only. This is the problem with him. All right. Now you can say, what is the problem? You have come to the definition. Why don't you give up? Now, the problem for the Eleatic stranger is, the Eleatic stranger is the disciple of Parmenides. Now, the problem is what stands. So, now you have to say that the sophist makes images, that means makes something false. So if he makes a statement, he makes a false statement. But now carefully, if you go through the Parmenides philosophy, according to the Parmenides philosophy, we can see, this is also very strange. He says, if at all you think, you can think only what is. You cannot think what is not. If you say you are thinking what is not, he says it means nothing. As a result, you cannot make any false statement. This is the problem. This is the problem for the Eleatic stranger. It is the problem created by his own guru, Parmenides. So now there is a long discussion, a very long discussion, abstruse discussion, which is going into the metaphysics. So don't worry about the metaphysics. I will try to make it simple. So this metaphysics is about what is and what is not. Remember, what is and what is not. What is called generally a being. In philosophy, being. Remember, what is known as being. So Socrates, Parmenides said, there is no question of not being. As a digression, I have to tell you that being is very important in all metaphysics. Parmenides spoke about it. Later, when you come to the modern philosophy, Hegel spoke a lot about this being, being, non-being and all that, Then the great German philosopher, Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger's magnum opus is Being and Time. He was a very, very distinguished philosopher of the 20th century. Maybe we may have to take it up later, when we are dealing with other modern philosophers. He spoke about being and time. So I'm not digressing on his philosophy. What I'm telling is, this being is a very important philosophical category. And we will try to understand what exactly has that got to do with this sophist and Parmenidean philosophy and all that. So we will place it in the context. So now you remember there was a dialogue called Parmenides, and there this Socrates was very young, and he was explaining the theory of forms, and it was critiqued by Parmenides. And there was so much criticism, and he was not able to answer. And Parmenides, in the second part of the dialogue, also he gave a method of philosophical inquiry, very difficult to understand. on which there were so many opinions. I told you that. So like that, here now Plato, you can say, because the Eleatic stranger is finally Plato only authored this. Na? He is probably answering Parmenides, or he is taking on Parmenides. So the Parmenides here is proved false. So for this, Eleatic stranger, he takes, certain important kinds. Actually, they are forms only, FORMS. They are being. One is being, remember. Being means existence. When you say something is, the primary meaning is it exists. A is means A exists. So the existence, so whatever things you name, it exists. So this being is something common to all the classes, in all the kinds. So being is a very important kind. Being is nothing but existence. Of course, if you take the verb to be or is, it has got, all the, see, this is a very big, treatise on metaphysics as well as language, philosophy of language. Because the verb to be is a very interesting verb. It has got, see, two functions. When you say Socrates is, Socrates exists, that's all. It is called, it is self-predicating. You don't require any other thing. Socrates is means Socrates exists. But if you say Socrates is snub-nosed, here there is a predicate which is snub-nosed. So remember the two functions of to be. So to be can be the same thing, identity, sameness, or it exists, or it can be something else also. Remember that. So being is a being, and the verb be is very interesting. Then the second important category in thing is rest. Then third one is motion. Now according to Parmenides, nothing can move. Everything is at rest. In Zeno's paradox, the moving arrow never moves. According to Parmenides, the visible world, it's all illusion. It's not the way of truth. It is the way of the world. So leave it at that stage. So he says Parmenides is wrong. There is rest and motion which are opposites. Motion is always there. Can you think of the universe without motion? So motion is an important category. Form, kind, rest is an important kind. Then non-being, he's going to explain non-being. Then there is a kind known as sameness. See, when you are classifying a particular thing under a particular genus, all the species will be same, of the same kind. So that is sameness. Then difference. What is difference? Suppose A is something X. When you say A is X, A is belongs to some category X. A is A means A exists. See, like Socrates is, say, dark. If you say dark, so there is a being Socrates, there is a being dark. They can interweave together. Both can coexist. So another important principle which Eleatic stranger discovers is different forms can interweave among themselves. So a thing can be described in several ways. It can have many qualities. That is why the same thing can have different names. That is why we find the Sophist in different places. Okay, so what he comes to the conclusion is non-being is Parmenides is wrong. Non-being is nothing but a different thing. It is different. Suppose you take something A, all the other things, if you take A as a being, all the things other than A, which are different, they are non-being. So, if non-being can be there, then falseness also, false statement can be there. Now a very nice example is given there. With that, I will end it. That example is very concrete. You will understand. It is not very abstruse. It is something like that. So in the dialogue, the Eleatic stranger asks Theaetetus, they are talking about the language also. What is important in a statement? It's very interesting, what is important in a discourse. In a discourse, suppose you keep on telling some nouns, it doesn't make any sense. Suppose you say Socrates, Theaetetus, Protagoras, Aristotle, and all that, a string of nouns, it won't make any sense. Or if you take a string of verbs, going, coming, eating, comma, all that, it doesn't make any sense. To make a statement, you require a subject, which is generally a noun, and a predicate, which is a verb. So he takes this sentence. Theaetetus is sitting. Yeah. Do you understand what is? Yes. So what is it? It is a statement. Is it a true statement? Yes, it is a true statement because I am sitting. Now, Eleatic stranger asks Theaetetus, Theaetetus is flying. Now, what is this sentence? Theaetetus is the subject. The predicate is flying. But is it a true statement? Theaetetus, no, it is not a true statement. It is a false statement. So, the statement can always be true or false. Of course, for us, it is not very difficult to understand because this is the world full of falseness and falsity. And today you have a separate industry which is known as the industry of fake news. You have. So for us, it is, it's not difficult to understand that false things are there. But in the context of the Parmenidean philosophy, he has to explain, what is false things. So Eleatic stranger, contrary to the teachings of his guru, he refutes Parmenides and he comes to the conclusion that false statement is possible. If false statement is possible, then imitation, producer of imitation, producer of images, who is the sophist, yes, he is there. He is the maker of false things and he very much exists. So just as being exists, non-being also exists. That is the finding. Otherwise, how can you explain this world of plurality? Non-being means it is not the opposite of being, it is something different from being. This is the finding of the Eleatic stranger in this. So finally, what happens? They have found out the truth. So means the final definition which is agreed upon is this sophist is a dissembler. Dissembler means one who hides things. He self-contradictor. He contradicts himself. He is an imitator of appearance. He is an image maker. He is a juggler of words. And all it is human creation. It is not a divine creation. So such a person is a sophist, and that is the veritable truth. So we need not be bound by Parmenidean philosophy, who says false statement, it is impossible to make false statement. It is possible to make false statement. That is the finding of the metaphysical analysis of the Eleatic stranger. So finally, they found out who is the sophist. So in simple words, sophist is an imitator. He is imitator of whom? He is an imitator of the wise man. So that is why all the bad name throughout the ages. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
I conclude for
that. Thank you for that wonderful lecture. And I think we have two questions which are there, both on philosophy. One is, can this dialogue be compared to Vaisheshika school of philosophy? This is a question posed by T.K.Jayaraman. And the second one is, what is meant by non-being in Eleatic philosophy? That is by M.L. Ramprakash.
Yes. Yes, in Eleatic philosophy, you cannot talk about non-being. Eleatic philosophy is like this. Eleatic philosophy is the first metaphysics in the Western world. It says like this, see, there is a being. Being is the reality which exists. He calls it being. That being is only one. That being is only one, and it always exists. That means it doesn't come into being, it doesn't disappear, it is in the same state. Okay, so, and it doesn't move, there is no movement. So that is being in the Eleatic philosophy. So coming to non-being, he says there is no such thing as non-being. You can think of only being. That what they say is you can think of only what is. Even at the stage of thought, he says you cannot think of, what is not. The what is not. So what is not, you call it as non-being. So you cannot think of non-being at all. That is the problem with the Eleatic philosophy. That is the Eleatic philosophy. Just.
The second question, can this dialogue be compared to Vaisheshika school of philosophy? This is by Timraj Shetty.
Yeah, Vaisheshika, yes, to a certain extent. There is a resemblance. There is a resemblance.
Okay. I thought MLR wanted to further ask something.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And what I wanted to say is, there is nothing known as non-being because there is nothing non-existent.
Yes.
There are many statements made here have very strong parallel to Bhagavad Gita. Now, in third or second chapter, it is said, there is no existence for that which does not exist, nor is there non-existence for what exists.
Okay.
And those who know the principles of things know the ultimate characteristics of this both. These are very subtle and metaphysical statements in Bhagavad Gita also. There is no existence for that which does not exist.
Yes.
Which is not being. And there is no non-existence for what exists. And that's one point I wanted to make. And second point is, see, angling is an art, you said.
Yes.
So, everybody cannot be an angler. I mean, probably this illustration was given to show that everyone cannot be a wise man, right?
Yes.
And the whole purpose of philosophy, if angler is an expert in angling, philosopher is an expert in the soul development, soul purification,
yes,
cleansing of the soul. Is that right, sir?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the whole concept of Eleatic philosophy is cleansing of the soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
In other words,
Again,
to find the truth, sir.
Parallel to Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
Find the truth.
Philosopher, yes, he has to find the truth.
According to Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita, truth is not somewhere out there you have to get. Truth is already there. It is covered over because of your impurity of misconceptions and wrong thinking. When the misconceptions and wrong thinking are removed through proper disciplined dialogue, then like a sun which becomes evident when the clouds are dispersed, truth will appear to you because it's already there.
Exactly.
That's why it is said, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. There is no purifier compared to spiritual knowledge in this world. And this is what precisely Socrates of Platonic philosophy says.
Sir, even according to
Antara.
Even according to Plato, there is the theory of reminiscences. He says all the knowledge is already in you. Theory of reminiscences is coming in Meno.
Precisely. Yeah. And again, see, the positivist school, you are mentioning philosophy of positivist
Logical positivism,
positivism.
yes.
Logical positivism, they are confined to only two of the four methods of knowledge.
Exactly, yes.
They are confined only to the lower two, the opinion and science. But the higher knowledge of metaphysics is other two, higher two, which is the dialectic and illumination. Now, higher knowledge is not, it transcends the limitation of physical senses and
Exactly.
mathematical logic. It
That is-
transcends it and apprehends the ideas. So that faculty of uniting your soul understanding with the Supreme is there latent in everyone, and that is not actuated because we have not paid any attention to its development, and we have accumulated a lot of impurities. That seems to be the message here.
Exactly.
So, and then again, imitation of the wise man. You mentioned about imitation of the wise man. I mean, this is emulation. This is purely Asiatic philosophical discipline. In second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna, "Tell me, Krishna, what is the how does one who is Chitta Prajna live and talk and speak and move about?" He gives a description of Chitta Prajna.
Yes.
And that he gives because he is to be emulated. Again, the 14th chapter, what is, again, another question Arjuna asked to Krishna, what is the walking life? How does he move about? A man who has transcended the three qualities. And he gives a glorious description of such a man who has transcended the three qualities and therefore illuminated. Now, he gives because you have to emulate them. So the emulation of wise men, emulation of high characters is a very important part of education, which our modern world is completely lost.
Exactly.
So this remark I wanted to make.
Thank you, Miller. I think those were really good dialogues and discussions as always. I think we are now at the end of today's session, and I now request our Chair for Programs Executive Committee member, Sri T.K.Jayaraman, to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Venkatesh. As usual, Jayaraman has gave a very beautiful Plato's dialogues, and actually is Sophist. And it's a very vast subject. It's very difficult to present it in a 50 minutes or 60 minutes, but he has made it very worthy of his speech. And I thank him very much for the excellent talk he has given to us today. And I also propose vote of thanks to all the people who have participated in today's meeting. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, sir.